Minutes from the April 20th, 2010 meeting. Have a motion to approve?
You do. I'll approve that.
Second. Motion made and seconded to approve the minutes from the April 20th, 2010 meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Being heard, motion carries. Item number 2, application Z98-8B, filed by Bieberly Architects, PA, on behalf of Deepa Hospitality Group, LLC, requesting approval of an amendment to an existing PC3 district and the approval of the final site development plan for a proposed hotel with a building height of 46 feet. The subject property is legally described as Lot 7 and a portion of Lot 1, Block 1 of the replat of the Auburndale addition to the City of Salina, Saline County, Kansas, and addressed as 3145 South 9th Street. And this is continued from the April 6, 2010 meeting. Dean?
Okay, Mr. Berger, who usually helps us prepare for these meetings, is in the, or has been in the hospital and is not available to help us, so we're having Dustin pinch hit over there, and I will have the report for you here, although Dustin's the one that primarily worked on this particular case. This was before you before and was continued from the April 6th meeting, and at that April 6th meeting we indicated that we needed some additional information about site drainage and projected runoff, and also about utilities. But by way of background, the first Planning Commission meeting on this particular property was in 1998, and there was a request to rezone it, plat it, and annex it for a shopping center, and that was approved in July of 1998 with final approval, but nothing really happened out here till September of 2001, and at that time the Planning Commission met to consider an application, and what that involved was taking the Lowe's home improvement store, which originally was targeted for the southeast corner, and moved it up to the northeast corner and reconfigured some of those things. But this is a planned commercial district with outlots along 9th Street, and so there was a customized ordinance drafted for this development. And one thing they did was request a 50-foot building height for any home improvement center, and they requested 40 feet for the outlots. And so this plan has come forward with a final site plan for one of the outlots, and the first thing that came along is that even though the height was bumped from 35 to 40, this was a request for a 46-foot height limit to accommodate a hotel. And the rationale for that was that most of the common space, restaurant, meeting space, things like that, would occupy the first floor, and then there would be 3 floors above that with rooms. And the summary of that is the footprint would be about 22,600 square feet. You'd have 115 rooms and 1,800 square foot meeting room plus a restaurant. And as before you today, the plan that you have in front of you shows 199 off-street parking spaces. Again, this is a planned commercial district. It does allow you, after a public hearing and notice to neighbors, to modify any of the development limitations in this subdivision, and so the request here is to modify the building height to 46 feet. When you had your initial public hearing on this, the consensus of the commission was that you were supportive of the 46-foot height, but final action on the site plan would await the details that we've gotten about drainage and utilities. So the two things that are modified here is they've taken part of Lot 1 and merged it with Lot 7, which is an outlot, and they're proposing the 46-foot height, but otherwise motels are a permitted use. So I think we've talked sufficiently about the building height. Now we'll get into the other aspects of this. If you look at the site itself, it has frontage on 9th Street and is in some proximity to the Schilling and I-135 interchange. That's what's made it an attractive location to the applicant for a hotel development. If we look at the 46-foot height, I think we indicated that both the Hampton Inn and the Courtyard by Marriott, which are to the west but closer to the interstate, are in a district that allows a 50-foot height limit, and they're right under between 45 and 50 feet tall over there, so this would be consistent with that. So the real question here, just looking at the 9th Street corridor, is do you think this is a suitable location for a hotel building with a height of 46 feet? And again, we look at the character of the surrounding area. All corners of the intersection or shopping center except Riffle Addition, which is really more with the Quick Shop, Wendy's, the hotels and motels, is really more caters to the traveling public. And we've certainly got public utilities and services in place, and the vision has always been that this be a commercial corridor. So want to address site drainage, and I guess this is a good place to do this. I'll let Mr. Stack weigh in on his perception as well, but I think a lot of people don't realize how much water ends up right in this location down here and crosses over, and there's a ditch right here behind the TSC store. Riffle Addition number 2 that you've looked at is on the south side of this ditch, but a lot of people don't know that the pond behind Target and the pond up here at Sam's Club, the water from those ponds ends up down here, comes down this ditch, and goes to here. This is the detention basin for Lowe's and for this whole subdivision, and the water here is stored, and then it's piped out, and it ends up here. And I think I'd let Mr. Stack weigh in on that, but that ditch is pretty flat, and it does not have a lot of capacity left in it. Would that be a pretty fair statement?
Yes, and that ditch actually takes, I'm trying to think of how far south it goes, but it goes almost, I believe it takes the water, well, it does, all the way to the levee. So all the water that comes from South Salina has to go through that ditch and that box under the I-35 right-of-way, which is
even as far south as like Phillips Lighting and
Yep,
in that area.
that's correct. So this development here assumed originally that all of the water on this site would drain to that detention pond and then be pumped out, basically, which was a good plan, and the plan they've currently showed us does not do that. So that's why we're pretty skeptical on how we're going to be able to arrange this, so that, because it's already an overtaxed system to begin with. If we allow water that wasn't supposed to go to the city, to the right of way, to go there, then it's just going to make it worse. So we'll have to evaluate that, but that's where we're at so far.
So if you could go back to that, Dustin. The criteria is that no more runoff can come off this site under the hotel plan than what comes off of it today. And so their plan is to take some of it and collect it in an inlet and send it over to here, and then take some of it, and there's a storm sewer that goes like this into the pond. And so the overall concept and the site grading will work, but I think the primary thing that we're concerned about are quantities and calculations and how much goes where. And so this is not real easy to read, but this is the south side of the hotel. They've got roof drainage and parking lot drainage going to here and then being piped over to the ditch here, and then they have building runoff coming off the north side. There's a storm sewer inlet here, and it gets piped all the way around and over to the pond. And I think while the conceptual layout works, the engineering department would like some additional time to look at the calculations and the quantities, because the two things they don't want to have happen are overloading the 9th Street ditch or sending more water to the pipelines up here to the north. And I had some photos which we couldn't get scanned in, but they're from May 2007, and they basically show almost all the Lowe's parking lot underwater. And the reason for that is that, which is probably okay unless you're a shopper, is the water there accumulated so fast that the drain sizes and inlets wasn't large enough to get it off of there and into the pond, which from our perspective, the parking lot's basically serving as an unwanted detention pond. So from a drainage system standpoint, that works. If you're a customer or your Lowe's and your customers can't get to your store, it probably doesn't work. So we think conceptually the layout works, but the engineering department would like to look at those calculations in a little more detail. We don't think access is an issue at all. This is the way it was designed, to be a shared entrance here. And so entering this, you would come to a point right here and enter the hotel site and circulate there. I might have, and I think we're still working on that tie-in here, but Dan or Kent, would you like to speak to a little bit about the bike, the multi-use path out there in front of the Lowe's development, a 10-foot path that's being developed out there, and we'd like to see some sort of sidewalk or connection from this hotel site to that path. But it's basically running along here, isn't that correct?
Yep.
And so it's designed to be a 10-foot wide, so it would accommodate both walkers and bicyclists, and it's out in the right-of-way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think Kent Johnson identified a spot right up here where it's flat and there's already a crossing for the ditch would be a good place to tie into that, but we will look at the final plan layout for the hotel and try to make sure that there's a physical connection so you can get from the hotel to that pathway there.
Yeah, that sidewalk runs, that new 10-foot hike and bike trail runs along the east side all the way down to almost Avenue A. So it wouldn't be that hard to connect to, right there at Riffle, right at the Riffle intersection. It's a pretty big ditch there, but there's enough right-of-way along Riffle and grading and a long enough area that I think we could connect to it.
Yeah, and I think we looked at the plans with the engineering department, and we think you can do that without building a bridge or a culvert across that ditch. I think our number one site issue that we haven't quite resolved and would need some additional discussion on is the parking. And the reason for that is when you have a hotel complex like this, there are three independent but not independent uses that you're trying to serve, and one of those is the motel guests, the other are restaurant guests, and the third is people using the assembly or meeting space. And so we do parking calculations for each of those uses, and then if it's part of a hotel complex, that is reduced by a factor of 25%, assuming that some of the people are already staying there in the hotel, but you do have people using restaurants or coming to events at meeting rooms that aren't staying at the hotel. And so the most conservative approach is to assume that you have flex space, and the building code says that if you have flex space, you can accommodate one person for every 7 square feet of area. And if you assume that, then you need 65 spaces to serve that area, and they would need a total of 233 on the site, whereas they have 199 available. If you take the approach that the only use of that meeting room is going to be round tables or banquet tables and chairs, and there won't be any standing or assembly or dances or anything of that nature, then you can get down to 30 parking spaces on top of the 168. So as I discussed this with Dustin, I indicated to him that we had always used the 1-to-7 ratio because, first of all, you want to provide the most flexibility, and second of all, using the other approach means that basically you're restricting somebody's use of the space, and one, is it realistic to expect that restriction to hold, and two, is somebody actually going to monitor how that space is used? So it's better to plan for it up front. So I guess what we're looking at from that standpoint is we have a plan in front of us that has 199 parking spaces. Based on the size of the meeting room, they would need 233 parking spaces, which makes them 34 short. And so the options would be to limit how the room is used, or decrease the size of the meeting rooms, or provide additional parking, or request that the Planning Commission recommend a reduction in the required amount of parking. So really those are the four issues related to that. And then if you could go to the utility plan, Dustin. I think what the plan that was submitted provided was, there's an existing water line up here. They were going to bring that down, bring a line along here, and provide a new fire hydrant right in this location. And what the fire marshal and director of utilities are suggesting is that there's a 12-inch water line right here, that there should be a stub brought off of it, and it could be out in this area or an island in the parking lot, but to have a hydrant either here or up here that covers these sides of the building, and then to bring a line off of here to the building and have a hydrant up in this location here. So we're recommending that the plan be modified to provide that accordingly. So fire access and everything as far as circulation works out fine. We did want to point out that there were sign limitations in this development, and on this property they'd be allowed to have a pole sign 30 feet tall with a maximum sign area of 130 square feet. So I don't believe, is that correct, Dustin? We don't have a sign plan or prototype at this time?
That is correct. We haven't had any permits or proposed signage for the site.
So that gives us our options. We have reviewed the plan to determine compliance with city ordinances, regulations, and policies. We have some questions about the drainage runoff calculations, but we think those can be resolved before construction starts. And we'd like to see the utility plan modified, but other than that, we think we have an approvable plan. So your options would be to approve or disapprove the plan as submitted, approve the plan subject to certain revisions or conditions, or recommend that they go back to the drawing board, so to speak, and submit a substantially revised plan. I guess these are the conditions that we are recommending, and the first one just re-emphasizes the signage, and since we don't have a particular plan, we're just informing you that on this lot, which is Lot 7. They'd have one pole sign. But the pole sign could be 30 feet tall. If they have a sign on their building, obviously that sign can be height equal to the building. We don't have a detailed planning plan at this time, but this would require that be done when a building permit's actually submitted. We want to have runoff calculations for the runoff directed to the subdivision drainage system and detention pond approved by the city engineer before a permit is issued. Get the public utility alignments approved and get the necessary easements recorded. And then our last items there, Dustin. So we would expect, again, because it's a planned district, that what you see is what you get, and what the Planning Commission approves is what gets built, and that a permit for this project would be obtained within 18 months, or your approval would expire. They can always come back and request an extension, but the purpose of that is not to have properties out there sitting with binding site plans that nobody's going to build, and if you don't build it, it expires and goes away. So 18 months is usually a good enough period of time to determine whether somebody's actually going to build something or not. So I think we've discussed the height before. Our primary focus at this time, I think, would be on the parking question, and again, the options would be to limit the use of meeting space, to reduce the size of meeting space, to increase the parking, or grant the applicant relief by approving the plan with 199 spaces instead of 233. So, Dustin, I think probably the best thing to do would be go back to the site plan that shows parking.
Dean, is the option of sharing some overflow space with Lowe's, is that an option? Or are sidewalks in place that would permit that?
I'd probably have to have Dustin go back to the aerial photo, because I asked that same question. I don't, what is likely to happen here, and it's in your packets, and I don't know if we have it, is it in the submittals for the screen, Dustin, the conceptual site plan that shows what is proposed south of Lowe's? It's in your packets, I know that. It is the, it's this one. So,
Looks like the parking.
yes, I'm going to guess that if this got built this way and you took all these spaces, that they would probably have more spaces out here under this plan that would be required here. I know Lowe's has more spaces than the minimum required for that type of retail store. So I guess that would be almost a fifth option, which I guess would be instead of a parking requirement waiver, it might be a deferral or something of that nature that says that when and if these get built, that there be some sort of overflow or shared parking arrangement there. That is an option, and that's something that I wanted to look at the aerial photo for, to see there is no physical connection between this site and the existing Lowe's parking. But that was the dilemma that we were faced with, is that since we don't want to limit how hotels or motels use their meeting room space, we have always used the one space or one person per 7 square feet, which gives them the most flexibility. but it results in a higher number of people that you can get into the meeting space than if you assume all banquet tables and chairs everywhere. So with wedding receptions and different types of receptions and activities, I think the room's probably going to be used for a variety of things, and we wouldn't want to necessarily limit the hotel and how they used it.
Any questions?
And we could also hear from the architect on how he or the owner arrived at the parking alignment and arrangement that they did.
Yeah.
But I'd be open to any questions on any of the other topics.
Any questions of staff at this point? Mr. Beebler, would you like to address the commission?
Ken Beeberly Architects. It's going to be impossible to put any more parking on that site. In our calculations, we used the 15 square feet per person. That's, as Dean said, that's a little more, not as, it doesn't require as much parking. Our theory behind that was most of the use of that space would be limited probably during the day. The 115 parking spaces for the residences, they will probably not be occupied until later in the evening. I am not familiar with how many or what the percentage of occupancy is, but we did not envision that the total parking of 115 stalls for the private rooms would be used during the day, when probably the meeting room would function or would have its use. So we decided to our advantage to go with the 15 square feet per person. So that's how we arrived at the 199 spaces. And like I said before, I don't think we can get any more parking on this space.
I just want to clear that up. So the option, is that an option then? 15, I mean, one parking space per every 15 square feet?
Well, there's two ways that you could look at it from a planning commissioner perspective. Is if, I mean, the downside to using the 15 square feet is then the fire department comes out and posts the room for that amount of occupancy. And if the hotel can live with that, that certainly works. The other option or way to look at it is when a hotel has a restaurant and meeting rooms, we provide a 25% reduction in parking for those spaces on the assumption that at least 25% of the people using them will already be out there. If you think that that's low, that there would be a higher percentage of people that would use the restaurant and the meeting space that are already accounted for in the 115 spaces, kind of as Ken alluded to, then that's another way of looking at it to justify that. But it's certainly valid to use the 15 square feet, but I'm trying to pull the numbers out here. But if you use that, then you have an occupant load of 121 people, and I don't know, I can't see here that Dustin calculated a number for the number of people if you had 7 square feet.
I think it was 35.
Which is it?
35 using 7 square feet and 80 using the 15 square feet. I'm sorry, vice versa.
But I was looking at the total occupant load in there at 15 square feet per person. Then that results in an occupant load that you could have 121 people in the meeting room at any one time. And I think at 7 square feet, obviously, it's almost double that.
Is that with 199 in the parking lot, using that 199 amount, or
The 199 is tied to using 15 square feet, which 199 is that you assume that the only use of that room will be like the banquet tables and chairs.
Dean, if I may say something, the 121 occupant load for that for the meeting room, that's set. What we're talking about is whether we use 15 or 7 square feet. If we use 7 square feet, we'll require 80 parking spaces. If we use 15 square feet, it's only 35. The 121 stays the same.
So you're already comfortable with the 121 then?
Yeah, that's
what you
based on,
figured.
that's based on the size of the meeting room, right?
And that's posted above the doorway or something, I take it, that it says this room, maximum occupancy, this room
Right.
is 100?
But what'll be affected will be the parking. The occupancy will stay the same.
So let me, and I know I'm just a little, just for a little clarification. The 199, how many parking spaces are required just from the hotel?
115.
115. At 15, or one person per 15 foot, how many does that give you at 121?
That's 35 additional parking spaces.
So that only takes us up to one.
Well, then we have the restaurant, which is entirely different.
Okay, and that adds more, and what does that add?
That equals 199.
Oh, it does add up equally to 199. Okay, so it just magically 15 to 1 just happens to fit 199 in the parking lot.
Right.
I didn't know if there were some extra spaces that we could sort of
There
take
may
this
be
down
one
to
extra space, but-
1 to 12 or something, so, okay.
Yeah, you have the 115 for the hotel rooms themselves. You have 53 spaces for the restaurant space. That puts you at 168 spaces for the restaurant and hotel. And what we're discussing is whether you should have 30 more spaces or 65 more spaces. And if everybody is comfortable with the 121 occupant load, then the 199 spaces would be adequate.
Well, I mean, I think I would. I don't think the hotel restaurant, I don't know that it's ever going to have 53 cars out there. I mean, really, maybe. And we're really only talking a little, at some point, they're going to develop that other lot down there, and you're going to have some parking spaces there. It's tight, but given the site plan, I don't see any other way to do it. And if you're okay with the 121, I don't think we have an issue, or at least I don't.
Yeah. Because what would be hoped for is the good thing about this site is that it's not one of those landlocked all by itself sites. There are someday going to be opportunities for shared or overflow parking in the future. It doesn't have to stand alone.
Of course, by then, nobody will want to go eat at the restaurant anymore anyway, so 20 years from now. So, I mean, it's the truth.
I just need a little clarification. I'm starting to get a little lost in the conversation. I thought I heard Ken say that you were okay with 121.
Yeah, the occupancy load, right.
And I thought I heard Dean say that 199 meets the requirement when the occupancy load is 121. So there isn't an issue.
Well, I think what Dean is saying is you can also use 7 square feet, which will require quite a bit more parking spaces. That's a little more flexible. The 15 square feet is usually set for tables and chairs. The 7 square feet is like maybe a lecture or something like that.
If you had somebody going in there and giving a presentation, if you had visualized like a school assembly room or a church meeting space where you lined up chairs in rows,
I understand that.
then you'd have an occupancy that would be 7 square feet per person, which would accommodate more people.
Got it.
I do understand that. I understand that. What's the requirement? What's the city's requirement or the building code requirement for parking? 199?
Based on the 15 square feet, yes.
Well, which do we have to base it on, 7 or 15? I'm hearing city.
I'd like to see it based on 15 and.
So it's optional. Doesn't matter per code.
It is not optional from the if you say it's 1 to 15, that means that it is limited to using the tables and chairs in there. That's what it is. It's like a banquet space.
Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Well, then it's solved.
That's where I'm at.
That's where I'm at. I think
Yeah.
it's solved.
Right. It just only means that if they have events in there that don't have tables and chairs, then there isn't conceivably going to be enough parking. As
So
long as
theoretically,
everybody understands that.
but there, yeah, I understand where you're going. So if a fire inspector went in, there was 150 people in there,
And it was posted at 121, that could
which would be
be
the same for any building.
any building or any situation.
I-
So
I think if they're okay
as
with
long as
that.
there's a meeting of the minds that the occupant load of that meeting space is 121 people, then the 199 spaces fits.
Yeah, I have my doubts it'll always be only 121 as well, but I mean, I imagine there may be some opportunities for more people, but I think eventually we're going to have parking there anyway, and I think it'll be more the order of the day will be that room will probably house less than that 121, and I mean, I have a feeling there'll probably always be plenty of parking space out there, but.
Well, I'm certainly okay with the 199, but to shift gears just a little bit, is the developer okay with the other recommendations I heard the city mention here as far as some drainage issues, some fire hydrant issues, some access issues to the bike path?
Yes.
Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Then I'd make a motion we approve.
I'd second that. Let's move this baby on down the road. I got to eat dinner.
It's been,
The only, just for the record of that, the only, with that being on the table, the only deviation from what is in place today is the 46 height versus the 40. And so if your motion includes the increase in height to 46 feet, then this plan complies with all other requirements.
It does.
Mine as well.
and do we need to make on the staff recommendations, do we need to make a number 9 approving the 199, or that would be just approving it as it is submitted then?
Yes. I mean, that's, the plan that you have in front of you has 199 spaces. If you recommend the approval of the plan as submitted, that's what you're approving,
With the 8
With the eight.
with those
recommendations.
recommended conditions.
Yeah. Okay, been moved and seconded to approve application Z98-8B with the 8 staff recommendations. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None being heard, motion carries. Thank you. Item number 3, application Z10-4 filed by Mark Augustine on behalf of 24/7 Convenience Stores requesting approval of an amendment of Article 6, Division 17 of the C7 Highway Commercial District by adding retail liquor stores to the list of permitted C7 uses in Section 42-338. Dean?
And do you have that one table scanned in there, Dustin?
No, this is what we have for this particular case right
Okay,
here.
so I guess I'll refer you to, in your packet, there's a table that I inserted in there, and what it does is it lists C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, and C6 and C7 districts. And so if you had a building, if you take, for example, the old Board of Trade building, that is zone C1, and you could have a retail liquor store there, but it would have to be inside that building and would have to have an indoor or inside entrance and not an entrance to the outside. In the C2 district, you can have a packaged liquor store, but it is a conditional use that have to be reviewed and approved on a case-by-case basis. In C3, C4, C5, and C6, packaged liquor stores are permitted uses, and in C7, they're not listed as a permitted or a conditional use. And we provided you with some background of some of the reasons for that, and they were twofold. One was that when the C7 district was created and mapped, it was to cover areas near our interchanges, and the belief of the Planning Commission and the City Commission was that retail-type uses or other uses that didn't cater directly to travelers should be in secondary locations, and the primary locations should be reserved for motels, restaurants, travel plazas, those types of things. There was also some concern at the time when the district was mapped. Some of the large truck stop operators did not want liquor stores or taverns in close proximity to their truck stop operations, so they discouraged that from being listed as one of the permissible retail uses. We did at one time have a place that was out at the Bombay Club on North 9th that was C7, and it had Kansas Wines and Spirit, but it was approved originally as a gift shop or souvenir shop, and it did offer some wine products. The request we have here is that the C7 district does not list liquor stores at all as being permitted or conditional uses, and the applicant here has a space, which I think Dustin has identified on the screen, and all of this Westport addition out here is Zone C7. It's a highway interchange district, and there's a space right here within this complex that the applicant is interested in possibly filling with a retail or package liquor store. And so this amendment request was filed to amend the list of C7 permitted uses to allow that. And so today we have North Ohio and I-70, North 9th and I-70, West Crawford and 135, and Schilling Road and Waterwell Road and 135 are the areas where we have our C7 zoning. And so if this request was approved, anybody that had C7 property would be able to lease space or have space for a retail or package liquor store. And we've laid out some options there for you. One would be to simply add it to the list of permitted uses, and if you had a vacant, if this was a vacant tract over here and somebody wanted to build a store there and have a packaged liquor store, they could without any formal review. The other option would be to say that you could have a packaged liquor store but require that it be located inside a hotel or motel or restaurant or convenience store building, which would mean that if you were a motel convention center, you could have a liquor store space as part of your complex, or as part of a restaurant, or as part of a convenience store building like this, but you couldn't have just a freestanding liquor store in a C7 district. Another option would be to make it a conditional use, and you'd have to review it and approve it on a case-by-case basis following notification of neighboring property owners, or you could recommend that the request be denied and that liquor stores continue to not be allowed in C7 zoned areas. And so we looked at this and said, well, in every other commercial district in the city, they're allowed on some basis, so completely disallowing them in C7, I don't think there's strong reasons for that. On the other hand, going out and taking a prime vacant lot and putting a retail liquor store on it without any review, there's probably not strong reasons for that either. So if you looked at alternative 2, that would allow a restaurant or motel complex or a convenience store complex like this to lease or set aside space for a retail liquor store, but not allow it. In other words, the retail liquor store would be accessory to some other use as opposed to the principal use. So those are just some options we threw out there. I think either option 1 or option 2 would fit with the applicant's desire. Alternative 3 is an option, but I don't think that would be one that the applicant would necessarily welcome. And then 4 is leave everything as it is. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions about C7 district or this request in particular.
Questions of staff? Well, this has always been topical stuff in the past.
I can weigh in on that.
Well, I mean, the list of uses allowed in C7 was purposely probably the shortest list of any commercial district. And some of it was, there was discussion that if you had, there was questions about, well, why does Walmart need to sit directly on an interchange? They don't cater to or serve travelers up and down the interstate, and if we have uses like that occupying all the interchanges, then there won't be suitable space for the businesses that do serve interstate travelers. So there was that was some of the rationale, but I do recall at the time that some of the larger truck stop operators were not keen in having taverns or liquor stores in close proximity to their truck service centers. But to me, that alternative 2 or 3 would help limit that. By alternative 2 would say, yes, you can have a liquor store, but the principal use of this complex is a convenience store, and you can have an accessory use as a liquor store or next to a restaurant or as part of a motel, but that it wouldn't allow you just to go out and build a store on a C7 zone lot. So I'll take any questions you have. Otherwise, you should probably hear from Mr. Augustine.
That's what I'd like to have. I'd like to hear from Mr.
No questions of staff? Mr. Augustine, would you care to address the commission? Your name and address, please.
Mark Augustine, 148 Mount Barbara. As Dean has pointed out, C7 zoning has evolved over time with all the conditional uses that have been added. And as cities grew towards the interstates, the uses need to evolve as far as what the public is looking for. One of the things he also mentioned is that some of the truck stop operators or convenience store operators that started in the community elected not to have that added. But one of the things that you're probably all aware of is that packaged beverage or liquor or alcohol is available at most convenience stores or truck stops. I have prepared kind of a summary of that here for you to look at. I'll pass them out to you. Everybody get a copy? Okay, good. On the first sheet, it shows Crawford and Interstate 135, and the red dots signify where you can buy either packaged alcohol or go to a restaurant and buy a drink or several drinks, whatever you prefer. On the left-hand side of the page, you have the Salina West Truck Stop. Packaged beverage or beer is available there, but you also have the Legend Bar and Grill right next door to it. And as you flip through these, it shows where alcohol is available at the interchange.
Excuse me, at the Salina West Truck Stop,
Yes,
what kind of alcohol is it?
they have packaged beer there.
Okay,
That would be like 3-2.
Correct.
okay.
Right. And then you have the Legend Bar and Grill right next to it in the Quality Inn Hotel. On the next sheet, it shows the interchange at Magnolia. You have the Schilling interchange. You have Sam's Liquor Store out there, Walmart, several restaurants. And I also included North 9th and Interstate 70.
Mark, does any of the other 24/7s across the state have packaged liquor sales?
Yes. Well, we have packaged beer. We do not have any liquor stores attached.
Okay.
As you know, as you travel around.
So I can stop at St. Mary's and pick up a case, 6-pack of beer?
Yes, you can.
St.
At that
Mary's?
store, we do have packaged beer.
Okay.
Packaged beer in our operation is somewhat determined how many cooler doors we have and what demand there is for it. So
And in this particular location, you're looking at putting in, like,
I have a liquor store operator that's interested in leasing the space from us to operate a liquor store. I personally not going to operate the liquor
Right,
store.
right, but he's going to have full-fledged liquor store.
Correct.
Okay.
That's the intent at this time.
I've got an idea who.
And your customer base would be,
It'd be the residents, it'd be people stay in the hotels.
People live out on Prairie.
Yeah. Rod Meyer.
so the only example of an actual liquor store that you, with
Convenience store.
packaged liquor.
Well, you have the,
Yeah, there,
Liquor, I don't
I mean, again, it's just, part of this is the, part of the, and that's why we gave the chart about the different districts. Just down the street from this, and Dustin, you can pan down, but you cross Dry Creek here, and there's a convenience, well, there's Quick Shop, and then there's Rod's
Store right there.
convenience store, and there is a
Liquor
liquor
store
store
right there.
right here.
which is noted on your map.
Yeah.
And the difference is you get onto this section of Crawford, it's zone C5, and again, the C7 is concentrated right at the interchange. So, you could argue that as partially intentional and partially unintentional, that it's allowed in every other commercial district and not C7.
Yeah.
But it's just that the list of what was permitted in C7 was a very compressed list compared to our other districts.
Yeah, I think,
My way in, I'm sorry, my way in is option 2.
yeah. It seems reasonable. I think you've done great here, just bringing this example. We're talking hundreds of feet, you know, I mean, I understand, but
Right.
I'm with you. I think that there's no reason not to allow it up there. I
Yes,
wouldn't like the
there's-
standalone by any
I
stretch.
don't like
either.
the standalone idea at all, but I'm okay with it inside.
Yeah, the distinction is correct, as I told Mark, the distinction is a couple hundred feet. That if you were
Yeah.
not in what's deemed to be a prime interchange location, then you could be just like Rod's right here,
Right.
which has a convenience store and a retail packaged liquor store with them. And so, because this is C5 and because over here is C7, that is the distinction, and that's why we have this process for property owners to tell us we need to fix our ordinance if it has distinctions that are artificial.
I too like option 2, because largely, I think that sometimes liquor stores are a little better appearing and kept if they're attached as an accessory to another building.
I would agree with that, too.
With that
And
said,
I think they're also a lot less acceptable to solve the
Right.
store situation.
so I would make a motion to approve this request as per staff
Now,
recommendation.
All we'd want to do is hear from Mr. Augustine whether he likes alternative 2, which would work for this current situation. But
I better look
you
at
better
it.
read it.
Better take it before we change our mind. No, I'm kidding.
I have read it.
Basically, what it's saying is that, like, Sam's Club has a liquor store that's
Gotta be inside the
accessory,
building.
and
That'd be
the
fine.
the retail
build a-
liquor store that you
Once
didn't go out and build a freestanding liquor store, but that it could be attached to a hotel or motel or restaurant or convenience store.
Right, that option's fine.
And that's my motion.
And I second that.
Dean, is this a public hearing on this item?
It is a public hearing from that standpoint, but on text amendments, we notify the public, but we don't notify neighbors. This is, again, if you approve this, it's going to apply at Schilling, and,
Right.
you know, if I have a hotel at Schilling and I-135, I can put a liquor store in it. So this is a district-wide change, not just for Mr. Augustine's property.
That being said,
He's just being a pioneer.
is there any member of the audience that'd like to comment on this application?
Carrie Nation?
All right, there's been a motion to approve application Z10-4 with option number 2, and is there a second?
I second that.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None being heard, motion carries.
Sweet.
All
Make
right.
sure you have mixers in that store.
We can just go next door to the convenience store.
Item number
It'd be a lot
4.
easier if I could just walk in here.
We're going to consider a request by Long MacArthur Ford to amend the approved signage plan for their dealership at 3450 South 9th Street to add a pole sign for a new vehicle franchise. The property is located at the South 9th Street Corridor Overlay District. Dean?
This is not a public hearing item. It's a planning commission, what do you think item, because we viewed this as not being within our discretion, but we wanted to point out that this Long MacArthur Ford dealership was approved as a planned commercial district, and they had a very specific sign package that they presented to the planning commission at that time, and it involved a couple pole signs out along 9th Street, an entry sign here, a sign here, and then the opportunity to put pole signs back here. The reason they haven't done that is that they now own this, which they didn't before, and I would think sometime during 2010 you may see a plat coming in that would square off this and probably create a development parcel right here, this being riffle number 2, and this is the old ramps that used to come off of here, so this will need to be squared off. But the planning commission at the time approved 4 freestanding signs in the front area and 2 back along I-70. If this Mahindra sign were added, it would be a 7th pole sign. So we're running this by you to see if you see anything here that would be questionable or objectionable. And so I think this is the existing Ford Lincoln Mercury sign, and then they're projecting it right in this area here. And the only reason that we were hoping, I did talk with Wes MacArthur on the phone, and we were hoping maybe the sign contractor would be able to help us, because we did not get a site plan that showed exactly where the sign would go. But Dustin, do you have that site plan scanned in there?
It's on the east or the west?
It is our understanding that the sign, the Ford Lincoln Mercury sign is right here, and the Mahindra sign would go up in this area right here. And as it was explained to me, Mahindra is a line of primarily pickup trucks, and they're constructed or manufactured in India. And as a condition for Long MacArthur to have a franchise, they've got to agree to put up signage that meets Mahindra's specifications. So this is over and above what was originally presented and approved to the Planning Commission. And so we looked at this, and given the size and scale of the dealership and the amount of signage that it has, they are well under what would be allowed for a tract of that size. And we don't think this is necessarily, it's not very tall, and it would fit in, and we don't think this is going to create any clutter or set any kind of precedent for other properties in the corridor. But we told Long MacArthur that because there was a specific plan approved at the time of the dealership, that we wanted to run this by the Planning Commission, just so you had an opportunity to review it and didn't have any concerns about it.
I have none.
Nor do I.
Nor do I.
So what we would consider that is approval of an amended plan that would allow
That's okay.
them to have signage from Mahindra.
I think we're going to see more of this too. Dealerships to maintain a viability, a financial viability in a dealership that size, which obviously has plenty of building and plenty of lot frontage to support that number of signs.
Well, we learned that both on Long MacArthur and when Marshall's relocated out there. It wasn't a question of Marshall's or Long MacArthur saying these are the signs that we would like to have. It was Nissan telling Marshalls,
Right.
if you want our dealership, you will have these
Yeah.
signs. And so
There's a-
there's not a lot of flexibility, and that's where Long MacArthur was here, that said, you want a Mahindra franchise, then these are the signs that you need to put up. And I agree that you may see more of it because you're going to have more dealers offering more lines at one location.
Great.
But we didn't see this as clutter, and we wanted to make sure that you agreed.
You don't need any kind of action on that, is that right? Or just
As long as there's a consensus that there's no concern about having the,
all right with that? Ken?
Good.
Looks like you got a bunch of nods there.
okay. And
Nodding earlier.
we just wanted to let you know that Alyssa's had her vacation for the year, so we can get back to our regular schedule, and that meeting you had off the 1st of May, that's probably not going to be the norm. So we do have items scheduled for June the 1st, which is the Tuesday right after Memorial Day, and what we have is surprisingly, the Moose Lodge was always grandfathered in as a almost residential agricultural tract, and it's got new owners, and they're seeking to establish commercial zoning and full use of that property. We have a proposal, which is, from a land use standpoint, is pretty simple, but from a technical side is pretty complicated, and that's up in River Run, up next to the Elks Club. There was a block there set aside for cluster of townhomes, and the Planning Commission approved a cluster plan that had 30 townhome units, 3 units to a building, and water and sewer lines were put in for that. And now the developer would like to abandon that and convert those back to single-family home sites. And the reason that's a little bit challenging is just because since water and sewer lines were put in for the townhomes, they're going to have to readjust lots and things around existing utility lines. And then the other aspect that we've gotten some input on is that River Run has 3 categories of lots. They have what they call estates lots, which are really large and have large setbacks. They have manor lots, and then they have villa lots, which are smaller and have compressed setbacks. And because of the size constraints here, they're proposing villa lots here, and some of the owners who've already built houses out there on the estates lots aren't sure if the villa lots will fit in. So we have sent the layouts to all the owners there in River Run, so they're aware of the proposed changes. We have a conditional use application for adding some multifamily apartments to the Market Aid building to make it a mixed-use complex there.
Adding what?
Apartment units, living units at the Market Aid building on East Iron. And then a request for a seasonal open-air market, which may convert into a more permanent Miller's Market location north of Casey's on North Ohio. And then I did want you to mark on your calendars, and Alyssa will remind you, but the Monday after the River Festival, the consultants working on the River Master Plan want to have a joint study session between the Planning Commission and City Commission on June the 14th. And so that would be the Monday after River Festival. That will be in this room, but they'd like to have that study session with both the Planning Commission and City Commission present, and that would be at 2:30. So we will have our regular meeting on the Tuesday after Memorial Day, and then a special study session, which would be Monday on the 14th. And that's what we've got on your calendar, and I've got a plat for you, Mr. Mike Sill, that I need you to sign before you get away. But that's all we have for you this evening.
Okay, very good. No other matters, we are adjourned.
Right.
So much for my